shorter than everybody else. This is the Reader's Digest, heavily abridged version of a story that's coming out in Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine in December. So if it makes no sense, realize that it'll make more sense in the real story. And if I go 11 minutes, it's because I took a couple of minutes from Tara. The odds are against us. How about a gimlet? I asked. Special occasion, Terry said. Skeptical, more than suspicious. Change of pace, I said, waving it off, and Terry didn't blink an eye, just reached for a martini glass, tossed some ice in it, then turned toward the shelves of liquor behind him. There was a mirror back there, and I watched him close. Here was the game I was playing. If he made it with gin, that meant yes, and if he made it with vodka, that meant no. My heart sank a little when he reached for the beef eaters, and I told myself that I should have bet on the kind of gin instead. Tanqueray, yes. Beef eaters, no. Something like that. Terry was quick to make the drink because business was slow that night. Tuesdays always were. Just me on my side of the bar and him on his, and then some empty tables behind me, and 3 guys playing cutthroat at the pool table near the back. I had something going there too. If one of them left before the others, that was a no. But if they left as a group, that was a yes. I'd made that bet when I caught sight of one of them reaching for his jacket. But then he just picked up his cue again and settled back into the game. Terry stirred the drink, strained it into a glass he'd chilled. Age spots were beginning to crop up on the back of his hands. Here I was, saw him a couple of times a week, but I'd never noticed it until tonight. Gimlet, he smiled broadly as he set it down in front of me, ice crystals skimming the surface. Mixed perfect, you see if it's not. My turn to nod. Perfect, sure, but it was still going to taste tough going down. Outside it was threatening rain, a cold rain coming, hints of a hard winter further on down the line. A Phillies game was on the TV above the bar, and it looked chilly there too, and the scroll along the bottom of the screen listed thunderstorm warnings. A series of windows lined the top of the wall behind me, looking up at the street, and I could hear the wind whisper along the edges of the glass. Remember Derek, I said, from back in high school? Derek? Terry said. Our year? One of our group? No, a couple years older, I said. Everybody called him Buzzhead. Gangly kid with the crew cut, yeah? That's him, I said. Reckless. Stole the Camaro from one of the Byerly brothers. Oh, yeah, said Terry. I remember him. And the girl, too, the one he stole it for. What was her name? Julia, I said. I wasn't sure about that name, but I said it like I knew, confident, because sometimes that did the trick. Yeah, Julia. Terry was wiping down the counter some spot I hadn't seen. And we called her Julie, right? Or Jules, maybe? Something like that. Derek's a little vague, Terry said, but man, she was a beauty, that Julie. Blonde hair down to here and that smile. New to the school, and just like that, all the guys were in love. He pointed his dish rag my way. You too. She didn't want anything to do with me, I said. Played hard to get, for all of us. Smart as well as pretty, Terry said, and we both laughed at that. She wasn't smart about Buzzhead, I said. I was trying to keep the story on track. All of us hanging out that night, shooting the shit, and him pulling up in a new Camaro, asking if she wanted a ride. Like Prince Charming, coming in to claim his princess, Terry said. I remember, and all of us blown away about where he got the money for it. Never crossed my mind he'd stolen it. Habit, I thought, or reflex, the way that Terry was going about his cleaning. The counter was spotless, but he touched it here and there, seeing things that I just didn't. It was wrong, that, I said. Bad boys getting all the breaks, he said. No need to romanticize it, I told him. Almost got his arm broke. And I guess you can't blame him, really. That was the Byerlys. You got to look out for what's yours. I swirled my drink, drank a little again. We watched the game a little bit, listened to the wind outside. From that TV scroll, I saw that the weatherman had moved up the timing of the storm. She's probably fat now, Terry said. Popped out a couple of kids. You know how it goes. Who? I asked. Judy, he said. That was her name, not Julia. I remembered it while we were sitting there, and we called her Jude. Yeah, that's right. And it was. I remembered now, too. Yeah, a couple of little rugrats, maybe bratty teens by now. You add up all the years. Spends all her time in front of the tube eating potato chips or something, waiting for her husband to come home. Maybe Derek. I mean, didn't he head off soon after she moved? Prison, I told him. He stole another car after that, and the owner of that one turned it over to the cops. Oh, yeah. He shook his head again, then laughed a little, but it was hollow now. Them were some crazy times, weren't they? Simpler times, I said, and I caught Terry looking at me like that didn't make sense. Not skepticism now, not suspicion, but just a little sadness. Short stint in juvie, I said, covering it up. That was it for him. Straight and narrow afterwards, I heard. On the TV, the announcer called out the next names in the lineup. At the pool table, the balls clinked, and one or two of them landed in the pockets, and the men mumbled and laughed. Do you really think she's like that? I asked. It's just idle curiosity now, just killing time. Snaggletooth spreading out around the middle. Terry gave a wry smile, just one half of his lips curved up. No, I bet she's still a beauty, he said. A few years on her, sure, but he picked up a glass, a clean one, and began to wipe the rim of it with a cloth. Truth is, I don't think people change that much, not most of us, at least. We aren't old, weren't, but we've been around longer than we should have, I sometimes think. I picked up that gimlet and I took a sip. It was about that time that the three men at the back tossed their cues on the table. The other two pulled on their jackets, and they settled up their tab and headed past us into that cold night. All three leaving together, that had meant yes, of course. Yeses everywhere I turned, like I had much of a choice anyway. Another? Terry asked me, or are you ready to call it a night too? I thought about it. I thought about all of it. One more for old times, I said, no rush. And they were maybe the truest words I'd said the whole night. But true or not, when he turned away to reach for the beef eaters, I decided I couldn't put it off any longer. It was a coward's way of doing things, him with his back to me, but I didn't think I could bear to face him. It didn't matter. He caught sight of me there in the mirror as I pulled the gun. Heck, maybe he knew it was coming all along. After I'd called it in, I just started walking, not headed anywhere in particular, not sure where I wanted to go. Sheet lightning lit up the sky in little bursts, letting me see everything clear as day, but just for the briefest second. And then other lightning zigzagged and split like fingers reaching down from the heavens. That story I was telling, it had gotten away from me. The Camaro, that's all I was trying to talk about. Wrongs and retributions, betrayal and loss, a sense of responsibility, the price you pay. But along the way, it had changed into something else, and now that something else kept following me, things I wished had been left forgotten. Like me and Terry one night, that same summer way back then. That was the memory dogging me now. Sheet lightning that night, too, I could picture it. And the two of us sitting out at the high school football field, splitting a six-pack. We'd been talking about girls, or I had at least, Judy in particular. What I'd glimpsed when she'd been over one time, what I felt like she was trying to show me, what I was going to do to her when we finally got together, what she was going to do to me, the things boys say, thinking it makes them sound like men. Things some men say too, I guess. Terry had just shook his head back then. You know, I'd just be happy to hold her hand. I'd probably called him a pansy, something worse, something like that. Yeah, he said, just take her to a movie, hold her hand. Take her out for ice cream, just sit there, looking into those blue eyes of hers. Her eyes are blue, I said. Yeah, he said, and then there's that way her nose turns up just a little, just at the tip, and then those freckles. And something about the way he said it, well, Terry had never seemed like the kind of guy girls went for, the kind who had any sort of chance with them. None of us had thought that way about him. "You should ask her out," I said, and I felt bad as soon as I'd said it. An easy offer, I'd thought. Terry was sure to get rejected. Even more than ever, I thought he was weak, and that's what made it bad, what I'd said. But he shook his head again. That's not how a fella treats a friend, stepping in like that on something that's his, something he wants. I just wouldn't feel good about that. He lifted his beer. He'd taken a swig. That's not the man I am. And it made me happy then, what he said about Jude being mine, about him and me being friends, and then how funny it was, him calling himself a man. Just all of it. But again, those were simpler times.